Hello, ladies and gentlemen and programmers. We're going to do CodeAcademy Lesson 6. We're going to learn about control statements, also known as if statements. So what I want you guys to do is open CodeAcademy 6. I want you to read everything on the left-hand side, try to understand it, ask questions, and definitely write down in your notes questions and be ready to ask that question. And do it on paper, write it down on paper, because I'm going to have you just, hey, I'm going to ask you randomly, hey, show me your notes. Okay, so basically what we want to do is we're going to go to CodeAcademy. We're going to go over here, and I want you to read through this stuff. And it's brand new stuff. It's powerful stuff. It's good stuff. So it's important that you understand it. So read through that, see if you understand it, and then write down your question. Okay, and then next here's the deal. So we're learning about if-then statements, also known as conditional statements. So if the condition is true, then you do something. If the condition is false, then you don't do something. So this gives us a ton of control that we didn't have before. Without these control statements, we really couldn't do very much. We kind of maxed out what we could do without a control statement. So for example, if you're playing a video game, right, and let's say you're playing a first-person shooter, if you have ammo, well, then you can shoot. If you have no ammo, then you can't shoot. So stuff like that is really important, and it really affects how a game's going to work. So you can imagine that without any sort of if statement, you couldn't have any sort of video game, right? You couldn't do it because you can't make any decisions on what actually happens and what doesn't happen. All right, so let's take a look at some things. So here's the deal. Write this down. This kind of summarizes what a conditional statement does. A conditional statement checks a boolean condition and runs a block of code depending on the condition. Curly braces mark the scope of the conditional block, similar to a method or class. All right, what does that mean? All right, so here's how it works. We have our if, and then inside parentheses we have our conditional statement. All right, and so it evaluates that conditional statement to see if it's true or false. So is the item cost greater than 24? Well, 30 is greater than 24, so that is true. So the condition is true. Therefore, this block of code right here will actually run. It's going to say high value item, and that's actually going to print. Now, on the other hand, if this said double item cost equals 10, well, then 10 is not greater to 24. This condition is now no longer true. This condition in the parentheses is false. So this block of code that is shown, the scope is shown by these curly braces. This will not run, so nothing will happen, if that makes any sense. All right, so let's check this out. So number one, what is the condition of this statement? Well, the condition is right here. Is this greater than that? Is that true or not true? That's the condition. Okay, what is the block of code controlled by the conditional statement? Oh, you should try to answer these yourself. See if you can answer the last two, and then I'll ask you. All right. So see if you can answer these two, and then I'll go ahead and go over it with you. Okay, hit pause, answer this. All right, what is the block of code controlled by the conditional statement? Is this right here. So this is the block of code that is either run or not run, depending on if that's true or false. And then what gives scope? Okay, so like basically if there's code down here, the code after this is not controlled by the if statement. So the only code controlled by this if statement is this right here. Well, how do we know? Well, the scope is defined by these two curly braces right here. So if this is true, everything from here to here will run. If this is false, this will not run. Okay, so now here's another kind of an anatomy of the if statement. Okay, so it starts with an if, duh. Okay, and then we have the condition in parentheses. So here's our condition, and it has to be boolean, which means, what does that mean? It means it's going to be true or false. So we have to be able to look at this thing in here and decide if it's true or false. Okay, and the opening and closing curly braces mark the scope of the code. So we have opening, closing. So if this is true, this code will run. If it is false, this code will not run. And then everything after this will just run as normal. Okay, let's take a look at some more stuff here. For the condition in the parentheses, we also use okay. So here's two if statements. Okay, now this is a boolean variable, is valid password, and at the moment it's equal to true. So this is a box in the RAM that's holding a true. So that's a boolean variable. And so in our if statement, we can use a boolean variable. But now down here, this is an evaluation statement, not a boolean variable. Is saying, hey, is the number of items in the cart greater than 12? And the answer is false. So the thing similar about this and this is they both can be evaluated to find out, is it true or false? All right. Okay, so and then here's I should show you this, because if I didn't tell you this, you'd seen a line of code like this and you're like, what the heck is going on? All right, so this if statement only has one thing that can be true, happen. It only has one line that happens, System.out.println. Brevity is the soul of it, right? And so notice they don't have the curly braces here. So if it's just one line, you can omit the curly braces. I never do, though, because I don't know why. I just never do. I like it with the curly braces. To me, it gives it structure, and I like that better. But a lot of people like it just to be faster without it. Okay, so now let's do part 1 and 2. Part 1 and 2. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. So we've read all this. Okay, and all we have to do is read it, understand it, and hit run. And we go to the next thing. So there's nothing really to do there. Okay, now on this one, there's stuff to do. So what I want you to do, oh, wait a minute. I want you to read all this, and then ask me a question. I forgot to put that in there. So I'm going to add that to my, I'm going to add that to the notes. I forgot to put it in I'm going to add it to my PowerPoint over here. So read that and ask me an intelligent question about what you've read there. I'll quiz you on it in class. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do it. It says, so number 1, it says, okay, write an if statement that prints high value when item cost is greater than 24. Okay, so we're going to click right here. We're going to start with our if. We have our parentheses, and then we have our opening and closing curly braces. So what's the condition? Item cost is greater than 24.00. Okay, so there's our if, and then what do we want to do? We want to print to our classic System.out.println, and don't forget the semicolon, and don't forget your quotation marks. And what are we going to print? High value item. Okay, and so let's go ahead, and here's the next question. Okay, so the question is, if I run this, quiz question, if I run this, what's going to happen? And the answer is, okay, the item cost is 31 bucks, basically. 31 is greater than 24. We'll evaluate that. That's true, so this should actually, print it. Now, let's try this. Quiz question number 37. What happens if I change this to 20.99? If I run it, what's going to happen now? Absolutely nothing. Okay, it skips that line of code, and there's no other code to run, and so it's skipped based on the evaluation. All right. Okay, so that is it, folks. Make sure you take those notes. Make sure you get this thing done. Ready, break.